गुड मॉर्निंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉर्ट। गना शॉर्ट में आप सबका स्वागत है। These days there are certain things which are very important for our nation, critical for our nation, which are going on. One is the Quad, the trade deal, the 10-year defense pact with USA, uh, plus the fact that BRICS is happening. Our prime minister is on a trip to Ghana and a 5-country trip. It's got some different significance. At the same time, the war in Ukraine doesn't seem to be ending. Uh, Middle East is in a mess of its own. China is going through, something. We'll discuss it, right, as we go down the line. But all this impacts India, India's growth, India's potential, India's role in world affairs, and how things shape up, right? That's why I thought I'll speak today about the Quad, India, USA, and the silence and the noise of its friends. There is a lot of silence coming out of our friends. There's a lot of noise also coming out of our friends. How do we navigate this, stereo effect? And so today I'll limit myself to the US part of it and the Quad part of it. Into different. We'll start with the Quad and then go to the US and examine it and see where we are going. Are we in uncharted waters, charted waters? What is it? And we also find ourselves in a strange geostrategic location where, India, Pakistan, China, and USA are in a new Quad, unfamiliar territory. And of course, look at why I got this cartoon. I found this cartoon, a very interesting cartoon. The Quad partners are yapping amongst themselves. And then you find, the dragon, he doesn't know what to do. He says, yeah, what are they talking? The way I look at it, well, I also know, I don't know what they're talking about. You have to make sense out of it. Okay, that's how it is. And so I'll go with, what Martin Luther King once said. A very famous quote. He says, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And the silences which have come out of our friends at this point are, self-explanatory, if I put it. It's not that they didn't come, they didn't speak when we needed it. We didn't need it really. We are big enough to handle it. But in a different plane, in a different manner, in a different way of thinking, it was appropriate that they responded, but they didn't. And they say silence coming, has its own value. It's its own communication. And that is something which I think will leave us thinking about it for a very, very long time to come. Okay. Be that as it may, let's examine the Quad and then the India-US relationship. One minute. Okay, let's talk of the Quad. I'll talk of the Quad through the joint statement which came out from the Quad foreign ministers meeting in Washington. But before that, let me go back to what the Quad is supposed to be. Because unless we understand the Quad and its implications, we also won't understand what's happening. It was in 2004, the tsunami had taken place, and all navies were virtually not able to handle the devastation. The US Navy was fully stretched. It was capable, fully stretched. And then the Indian Navy stepped out. And the Indian Navy stepped out and did a lot more. In fact, in many cases, it matched and went ahead of what the US Navy did. And that was the time when India was affected by the tsunami. So suddenly people said, we never expected this. A country which is affected by the tsunami sends its navy out to, all over the Bay of Bengal, across, to help people where the US Navy couldn't reach for whatever reason. And here was this budding superpower who kept its navy in its ports and didn't help anyone. And this didn't go unnoticed. It was Shinzo Abe, then the Prime Minister of Japan, who said, look, we can't ignore India anymore. We don't have that capability which India has. Until then, the story was all about Asia Pacific, China. He said, no, we can't. So he floated this concept of Asia Pacific, Indo-Pacific. But initially, people said, yeah, we should have it. And he, at that time itself, knew that China is going to be a global problem. Far-sighted. But who chickened out? I mean, Australia first. Australia said, no, we have very deep trade with China. And they had a prime minister who these days writes a lot of books about China, but he was seen as half a communist. And he had a long tenure in China and he understands Mandarin well. So he pulled out of it. And then it was followed by Mr. Manmohan Singh. He said, we are just developing our equation with China back. So we can't have a formulation which is primarily against China. And China itself, we have to go back to the times. We were progressing. China had taken off by then. And China was mighty upset by the fact that Quad was being spoken of also. They said, look, why you, on one side you want cooperation, on the other side you want confrontation. And US also took a step back and the Quad dissipated. It was around 2017-18. And mind you, Quad, this was actually fatal for the South China Sea construct because soon after that, 2014-15, China occupied those islands. And Mr. Obama, who was given a Nobel Prize for whatever he did or didn't do, right, just kept quiet. In fact, I feel US chickened out at that point of time. And one has to remember that was a time when the Afghan crisis or the Taliban-Afghan battles were on. Pakistan was its favorite, all that. Different geopolitical era. But come 2017-18, people said, yeah, we have to do something about China. China is becoming too big to handle. And it was then understood or felt that, look, Quad, you need something like Quad to handle China. And China has become too big to be contained by any one nation. So be it. But the idea didn't take off. It was in COVID, 2020 or so. Till then, some kind of meetings used to take place on the side of ASEAN and things like that. Sideline meeting where the secretaries used to meet. Not even secretaries, joint secretary level guys from all 4 countries used to meet and talk and all that and leave it. It was in COVID when China started asserting itself that Mr. Mike Pompeo, who was then the Secretary of State, USA, he insisted on revitalizing the Quad. And the first foreign ministers meet was held in Japan. And then slowly it progressed to summits and all that. And this started actually in the Trump era, went through the Biden era, went strength to strength. At one point of time, it was felt that this is going to have a military value and it's going to contain China. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen because AUKUS came in between and Quad got stymied. And Quad took on other things, supply chains and vaccines and things like that. Which was necessary. Certain amount of cooperation took place, but a lot didn't take place. Okay. Even now, whatever the Quad, whatever the resolutions and all that are all a question mark. But what is the value of Quad? Same thing, what I said. The silence of Quad is more important than the noise it makes. I see someone says Quad is all bullshit and only to settle behind the doors. This is what Surya Prakasam Susarla says. I don't agree with it. It's the unsaid which conveys more. And you have to understand that between the Quad members, the maximum activity is been in the military domain. It doesn't talk of military, but it acts military. Especially Malabar exercises, exercises in the Pacific under the PACOM, that is Pacific Command of USA. A lot of joint exercises, a lot of military exercises have taken place. So at one level, Quad doesn't talk of much, but at another level, Quad is the maximum cooperation between these countries in the military domain. So there's a duality in Quad. So that conveys something to China. And to that extent, I think Quad has relevance. You can't count it out. And Quad has relevance for us. It gives a bridge to talk. It's a table to talk with Japan, Australia, and USA. And one must also remember till 2019, 2020, Australia was one country which was against India. I mean, the only good ties we had with Australia was cricket. Right? Other than that, we never had good ties with Australia. Well, things have changed. Australia, for whatever it is, they have changed because China gave them a good kick. Japan was always our friend. And this was a time when, 2020 COVID time, then people started saying, look, India is the future. It was evident. 5 years down the line, is India the future? Yes, it is. I have no doubt about it. And I'll talk about it separately. Maybe tomorrow, day after. So you have to see that in that. For those of you who express statements and, they're saying, oh, Quad will do this, that. No, it doesn't. It carries a big stick without talking. That's the first thing people have to understand. Signaling is huge in Quad. The fact that foreign ministers are meeting once in 6 months, summits are being held regularly, itself is a signal to a lot of people, and especially to China and to Russia. I mean, let's not leave Russia out of this game. Okay? Right. So let's get back to the joint statement. What happened in this Quad meeting? Okay, I'll go through it. There were 4 key areas which we are focused on: maritime and transnational security, economic prosperity and security, critical and emerging technologies, humanitarian assistance and emergency response. The good thing about this whole story is, Quad, there was a lot of confusion. Quad will do this, Quad will do that, all that. I think they've narrowed down to these 4. They said, we'll leave it at this, without making it too big and confusing. So we'll look at these issues, what came out, and then we'll get to India and US because as an extension of this. And remember, this is a critical period. I said this is a time when our Prime Minister is heading into. Today is in Trinidad, Tobago. Tomorrow he'll be in Brazil. From there he goes to Argentina. From Argentina goes to Namibia and then comes back. And they're all critical places for us for many reasons. And I'll analyze this separately. With BRICS, after the BRICS, something like that. We'll do that. So these 4 will take. Part of the stories which came out is Quad expressed support for the ASEAN. ASEAN are these countries: Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines. All these are the ASEAN countries. So they supported ASEAN, its centrality and unity. Within ASEAN, They're different countries, different structures. Some are democracies, some are autocracies. People like in Myanmar, there's a civil war going on. You find a whole range. So it's important that ASEAN stays united, and it is central to Indo-Pacific. So you have 10 countries on board, plus these 14 countries. Very important. The Pacific Islands Forum, which is here in this area, right? PNG and Solomon Islands and all that. Again, they are a great link. So that covers the Pacific. And the IORA, that is Indian Ocean Rim Association, which is headed by India. So you covered this area, you covered the central parts, ASEAN, and this. So the first thing is that they gave a broad coverage of Indo-Pacific. I think it is good. It's a signal to many of these smaller nations. See, big nations, we have different viewpoints. But for smaller nations, this is important that Quad is there to help them. They can reach through any one of these countries to the Quad. It gets discussed, their issues. It's a very important thing for them. Then they spoke about the East China Sea and South China Sea. That is basically what China does. Their unilateral occupation of islands, which they're still trying to do with Philippines, especially in this area. Right? Spratlys. Then their actions in the Taiwan Straits, flying aircraft dangerously, ships ramming, things like that. Obstruction of freedom of navigation flights and all that, and then dangerous maneuvers, all that. They put it. So it's on record. They might not do anything, but it puts caution to China. That, look, there's a limit. You go beyond that and something happens, you're risking escalation. If escalation happens, there's a chance that you might have to face foe. This is a psychology which I wouldn't say very few people understand. People need to understand. Why? In China, look at it from the Chinese point of view. The Chinese don't want to shadow Quad beyond a point. Because as it is, they feel they have 4 fronts. The Korean front, Taiwan front, South China Sea front, and the Indian front. 4 fronts they have to deal with. And Quad has strength on all these fronts. And Quad has the capability of putting them in a 2-front situation in war. That they don't want to get involved. One has to be clear about this. So this messaging is good. Then there's the issue of critical minerals. We've all been speaking. Rare earths. China is controlling rare earths. And I've done a program on this. Yes, China is controlling rare earths. It's got reserves of rare earths. It's got the capability to make rare earths and magnets. Because these magnets are required for EVs and all that. Everyone knows that. They dominated. Why did that happen? It happened because everyone allowed it to happen. It was convenient for everyone to allow it to happen. I'm not talking for China, but we must also understand China said, I'll take on the pollution and I'll make the money, which is a fair deal. Because they're getting geopolitical value out of it. That's a Chinese calculation. We didn't want pollution, we gave it away to them. But now things have come to a head. Now that China has used this geopolitical card, this story has come out. That, look, the Quad nations have got together and they discussed this critical mineral thing. They spoke of non-market policies, practices for critical minerals, derivative products, and the technology. And they said, yeah, you can't rely on China. They didn't mention China, but they said so. But what's the issue here? What we need to understand and the potential. I do hope that this talk gets converted into reality. Why? The potential is within these 4 countries. USA and Japan have the technology for processing critical minerals. Japan doesn't have critical minerals. India, Australia have critical minerals, as also USA. They might not have certain minerals, but largely you have most between the two. But you technology is with Japan. Incidentally, there's a Japanese company which Toyostuma or something like that, I don't remember. It just set up plant in Vishakhapatnam or somewhere, or Bhubaneswar or Cuttack. I'm forgetting. Somewhere there. For rare earths. Okay. They have the technology. So is there a scope for these four countries to come to a thing? Say, okay, let's get together and do this. Of course, there are issues. We don't know. But the potential is there. And it's important for us. It's not only important for us, it's important for everyone. And the Chinese understand this. As per many estimates, it's not only Chinese estimate, as per many estimates. It's time to get off Chinese dependence. In their own view, in China's own view, they feel in the next decade, this card they'll lose. They want to maximize it now. After that, no more. Okay. Then North Korea they gave out. Japan is involved next to North Korea. They spoke of North Korea, which is quite understandable. They said North Korea shouldn't go around destabilizing this area. Again, here, my way of looking at it is not Quad should have a policy of engagement with North Korea, not only through USA, but the next country which can really talk to North Korea is India. Why are we not doing it? Something I can't understand. And then, of course, they spoke of Myanmar. Myanmar, look, let me explain. You look at Myanmar. Myanmar is the connect to India and Pacific, or the Indo-Pacific, Central. And, like I said, a lot of things they support ASEAN. They said, they're concerned by the worsening crisis, all that. But fundamentally here, I think the Quad has missed the trick. A lot of dysprosium-based rare earth or dysprosium is not there in China anymore. It's in Myanmar, which is being smuggled out from the border towns. Okay. Is there a case for the Quad to actually start engaging Myanmar with the equities which it has and reaching out and pushing China out from there? Of course, you're going to have issues in this. That's a different story. So while they say all this nonsense that they'll go through ASEAN and all, it doesn't work. ASEAN has not been able to curb this problem in Myanmar. After all, Myanmar, the actors are China, ASEAN, India, and even Russia. Even USA through Bangladesh, that humanitarian corridor and all that nonsense. But why doesn't Quad sit down and say, okay, with ASEAN, we'll take ASEAN into our grip. We'll go to Myanmar, talk and resolve the issue. So that's where Quad becomes a talk shop and nothing more. Let's see how it goes. Then, for the first time, someone came out with a statement on Pahalgam, which is good. Okay. Well, you said too late, maybe too late, but at least it has come out. The silence remains. None of the foreign ministers spoke of Pahalgam, but this is there in the text. So what did our external affairs minister say? Have a look.
A word about terrorism in the light of our recent experience. The world must display zero tolerance. Victims and perpetrators must never be acquitted. And India has every right to defend its people against terrorism, and we will exercise that right. We expect our Quad partners to understand and appreciate that. India plans to host the next Quad summit. We have some proposals on how to make that productive. I'm sure so do our partners. We will discuss, and I'm sure we will agree. Once again, I thank Secretary Rubio for hosting us today, and I look forward to our discussions. Thank you.
So what external affairs minister has made it very clear. I think this is the important thing. See, his speech was quite a bit. I've just picked a small part of it. Okay, I've just picked a small part of it. What is important in this talk is the fact that India has a right to do what it wants in its interests and self-defense, and it will exercise it. So that's a communication which has been given. He didn't say that you didn't talk, that's all fine. We've said what we have to do. And I think it's a big growing power. This is a pretty clear statement. It clarifies a lot of issues. And I'm pretty happy with this. Okay. And we need to see what we can do and what we can't do. And what we can do, we have done. Okay. Right. Next. So the issue 10, if I summarize, there's a quad critical minerals initiative. I hope it comes. Will there be maritime law enforcement on a joint basis? I don't know whether it will happen. But training ho jayega. Legal dialogues will continue. Coast Guard cooperation will continue. These serve purpose of messaging and jointness, but will it result in anything? No. This Indo-Pacific logistics network, again, question mark. And Quad ports for future membership partnership is going to be held again. Port level, this thing. That's all small fry, which is going to happen. This part thing. Yeah, September, the Quad summit is going to be held in India. Let's see what happens. September is quite a distance away. It's still 3 months away. And you have Mr. Trump coming there. By then, a lot of water would have flown in Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea and in Pacific. Let's see what happens. But it'll be interesting. And then the Quad foreign ministers meet, which is supposed to be in 2026, early 2026. So that's January. So this is the outcome of Quad and where it is. We made a statement. We are part of Quad. We are engaged with them. Important thing, we are engaging with them positively at a time when our Prime Minister is going for BRICS. And BRICS and Quad, you know how it is. But this is the more important thing which I thought I'll discuss with you and have a thing. So we're going to look into a 10-year cooperative framework. Now this discussion happens between our External Affairs Minister and Pete Hegseth, who's the Secretary of Defense there. So let's see what Pete Hegseth said.
Well, Mr. Minister and your team, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Pentagon. Thank you for taking the time. And we certainly look forward to future engagements as well, hopefully a 2x2 with Minister Singh, who I had a chance to speak to this morning, as well as Secretary Rubio. In their February meeting, almost right at the beginning of the administration, President Trump and Prime Minister Modi set a strong foundation for our relationship that we're building on here today. Productive, pragmatic, and realistic. And our nations boast a rich and growing history of cooperation, driven by a shared commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. We're both clear-eyed regarding the dangers of aggression in the region. And most importantly, we possess the strength, and I believe wisdom, to together counter it. The United States is very pleased with the successful integration of many U.S. defense items into India's inventory. And building on this progress, we hope we can complete several major pending U.S. defense sales to India, expand our shared defense industrial cooperation and co-production efforts, strengthen interoperability, which is something Minister Singh mentioned multiple times between our.
And if you see this guy, he's Elbridge Colby, and he's their, China thinker, or rather East Asia thinker. He has a lot of influence in the US as far as issues concerning Asia Pacific, or rather Indo-Pacific and India defense cooperation and things like that. So, right, we'll get back to that a little later.
Forces, and then formally sign a new 10-year framework for the U.S.-India major
So he has spoken of the 10-year framework for India and USA in this dialogue, and that's what was reported. He's spoken of I2U2. He's spoken of 10-year framework. This chap Elbridge Colby is there, and a lot of issues, if you see, have been spoken. And what's more important is almost the same thing Pete Hegseth spoke in the Shangri-La dialogue 3 months back. So what you see is, let's get ahead with it.
Partnership, which we hope to do very soon. We're eager to work alongside you to realize our shared goals. They're deep and ongoing. Mr. Minister, your visit today marks an important milestone in the ongoing series of high-level engagement between our two great countries. Once again, thank you for being here. Look forward to a robust discussion with your team and a lot of partnership going forward. Thank you, sir.
So there's been a lot of discussion between India and US on these issues. The defense-to-defense deal, or rather the relationship with India and US, is the strongest. That's what I felt for a long time. And he's also spoken of it. The defense cooperation, has it turned into action? At some level it has, at some level it has not. Is it only one-sided? Yes. Interestingly, while USA looks at a lot of export to India, their deals are basically they want to sell their aircraft, all that. I think we have to start looking at exports to USA and ask them to put their MRO and things like that. I think there's a lot of value. It's just not, being able to fight against China and Pakistan and all that. It's our building our capability and economy. And I think for that, a partnership with USA is important. You can't paint everything with the same tar brush. And I'll come to that also. Right. When this is happening, there's one guy who comes out and says, I want to put 500% tariffs on India. Okay. And also, Munir went. Now the air chief has gone. Their air chief has gone to USA. So I'll talk of the tariffs a little later. Look, what does that indicate? You're also on the verge of a trade deal. And then they say tariff. So it's confusing. That's why I said it's the silence and the noise. Let's talk of this fellow first. Let's dispose Pakistan off and then we'll talk of anything else. Why has Pakistan gone there? He's gone there to say, look, give me technology, give me spares, give me whatever. Because they've got still F-16s. They want something out of them. They want to get back into the American camp. They know that, they'll need America to handle Iran. They know that unless America sets its foot in Pakistan in some manner, they can't handle India tomorrow. And they know that, look, the Chinese are also in the game, right? And they're not comfortable with the Chinese. They're not comfortable with the Chinese at all. Pakistanis. So they want a hedge. So they're playing a hedging game. Play America off against China, use both of them against India, use America against Iran, and use China against Afghanistan. But China has no other choice. They have no other choice. But what is the signal we get out of it? Let us watch the space. Will US give them something? If US gives them something, then we have to rethink, recalibrate. What should we do? So it's something interesting which is going on, we'll talk of. And then we'll talk of this trade deal. On one hand, you say 500% tariff for Russian oil. The point is this: why? I mean, everyone knows now that we are not going to get off Russia's oil. If the choice is between not taking oil from Russia and junking the trade deal, I'm sure we will say good to hell with the trade deal. Will it be useful for USA? No. Will it be useful for USA to junk the defense partnership? No. So in both cases, that 500% partner, tariff and all is a bit of a red herring. I'll not take it too seriously. But then it's there, so we'll deal with it. But this is interesting. People say that we're getting to an interim agreement. And the issue is about agriculture. Now, this is something again we have to understand. A lot of people don't understand this. Why this issue of agriculture? The issue of agriculture between the two nations is because of the fact that both America and USA are net exporters of agriculture. They can't absorb our agriculture. We can't absorb their agriculture. If their agriculture enters our market, they'll disrupt us. If ours goes there, we'll disrupt them. We might not be able to, but if we disrupt each other in some manner, in any manner, the world will suffer. So is it a good idea to come to an agreement on agriculture, to join hands and attend to the larger issues of the world? And that is our question mark in this trade deal. That's what I have, because I don't see that coming out. And I'll explain to you why. Earlier, China used to buy a lot of soya beans from USA. Now they've switched to Brazil, which is the other one. Fine. But Brazil was selling it somewhere. So that market is somewhere there. No? Plus the fact that every year India exports food, so does China. To the world, everyone is there to buy. Is there a case for us to join hands together and do something? And I think that's the way out. Rather than trying to explore each other's market. Will our people have the capability and the good sense to get to that? Let's see. I don't know. But is there same way dairy? We can't let the American dairy products enter our market. It will be killed. Our dairy will be killed. And we are the biggest sector. After all, after Operation Flood, we are the biggest dairy producer in the world. You can't disrupt that. Agriculture, dairy, everything is about 15 to 20% of our GDP, maybe around 15%. Okay. Now, the thing is that if you disrupt that 15% and bring it down because of these disruptions, there'll be about 40 to 50% of our people who are dependent on that will have a problem. Rural India still depends on agriculture. So we can't do that. They know it. That's our red line. They know it. And largely, when you read all reports, some deal is being worked out where some compromises have been made. All that. There'll be vad vivad on that. People will say we shouldn't have done. People will say we should have done more, not less. That will go on. But let's see the outcomes. Now the question is, you're doing a trade deal with a country. You're doing a defense deal with a country. You feel that this country is going to be your anchor for your own rise, and then you want to put 500% tariffs. So all this doesn't gel. Okay. Now let me step back from this and say, if the trade deal doesn't happen, if a defense cooperation doesn't happen, will it affect India? It will affect India. But do we have alternatives? We might have alternatives. You'll suffer for some time, but you'll have alternatives. If those alternatives have to be found out, this is the best time when China is in trouble and Pakistan is in no shape to do anything. We can handle. You can handle it. Okay. Now look at USA. USA needs us more to revive their economy. They are in a state of financial instability and economic instability. It might be strong, big economy, but it's unstable. They're in a trade war. They've always banged that, if I shut out China, the alternative is India. So if that is the case, they have to come to India. Will they forsake India? No. Even for us, we need USA. We need USA. Let's be very clear. It's not as if we don't need them. Right? For many reasons. Handling Pakistan, handling China. So what if USA has a presence in Pakistan? You still use that lever against Pakistan. So, in geopolitics, in defense, in foreign affairs, nothing is taboo. It's interests which matter. How you reach your interests. Okay. So we will see how all this goes on. So I thought I'll put all this across to you today. I've given you various perspectives of the relationship between India and US and also Quad. We'll talk of BRICS. And then after the BRICS gets over and see how things move, then we'll do a holistic analysis. Right? This is all I had to say today.